Hello, everyone, and welcome back to droidCon London. I'm here with another interview, and I'm here with Thomas.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So you're here giving, moderating a roundtable
Yeah,
talk, but you've also obviously been involved with droidcon for many, many years at many, different droidcons as well.
yeah, that's true.
And so you're also giving a talk on all about keyboard shortcuts
Yeah.
within Compose. And I think you make the statement that they should be mandatory within apps. Why is that?
Yeah, that's true. I think I learned about the importance of keyboard shortcuts by looking at other platforms. So you see, I always have been thinking that you can be an expert in one field only if you are always looking over the fence. That means looking at what other platforms are doing, and particularly iOS and iPadOS are really great at keyboards. So Apple has been selling keyboards for the iPads for several years, and regardless if you really call them magic or not, so they are very popular among the iPad users. Yeah. Because they add a lot of productivity features in iPadOS.
Sure.
And since I always wanted an iOS device for myself, so I have an iPad mini, so I learned about these features and I thought to myself, well, actually, this is something we could benefit on Android as well, which brings me to the Android part of the equation, whereas Chrome was being able to run Android apps always has this support for detachable keyboard since, I believe, 2018. So I thought, well, if iPadOS can have it and if Chrome OS can have it, why shouldn't our Android apps not have it?
It makes a lot of sense. I've definitely seen as a iPhone, an iPad user myself, that yeah, it is very useful to have without a doubt. So maybe for developers that may have looked at keyboard shortcuts in the past and maybe looked at trying to implement them in a view-based system,
Yeah.
what's the real difference about implementing it in a Compose UI compared to the traditional view?
Well, the most notable difference is that most certainly Google decided to invent new classes, but the more underlying difference is that the Compose implementation heavily relies on the core concepts of Compose, meaning modifiers being functional, being declarative, whereas the old view style implementation heavily relied on views being an imperative UI framework. So for views, it was all about registering listeners or extending existing classes, which follows this imperative paradigm, whereas on Compose it's making use of modifiers.
Your talk also kind of covers support for beyond Android.
Yeah.
What are maybe some common keyboard shortcuts, some issues with implementing some common keyboard shortcuts that you've found?
Actually, that was a pretty interesting one. So if you think about keyboard shortcuts in general, so there are three key combinations that will come to your mind within a second. It's cut, copy, and paste.
Yeah.
And the corresponding shortcuts are, depending on the platform, Control, X, C, V, or if you are on iPad OS, on macOS, it's the Command key.
Yep.
And we should think that it's not a big deal to distinguish between this, but I encountered quite a lot of limitations. So we need to do more code on our own that I was anticipating. So there, I think either Google or JetBrains may want to add some stuff to make developers' lives a little easier.
Let's shift gears a little bit to your roundtable
Gladly.
and vibe or hype. Can AI build your dream app? I think it's a very what's the word? It's a very good title. It's a very hot topic. It's very important at the moment. And I think when people talk about this, there's a lot of everyone has a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
Everyone has a lot of ideas. What's your gut feeling around using AI in this manner in terms of is the net gains worth it, or is there more issues that it introduces?
That's a very interesting question. The honest answer is both. So thinking about vibe coding, you can get results that look nice really fast, but there is always this hidden cost of maintainability. So we may really save some time using these tools, but we always need to keep in mind, so what happens with that code in, I don't know, 5 months, a year, 5 years. So maybe to explain this, I have a heavy background in the Java enterprise where I had to work with code that was 10 years old or longer or older.
Yeah.
So we always had the requirement to maintain this code. And I'm really wondering, will we be able to maintain code that has been created by AI in 5 years' time?
That's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely had a look at a bit of vibe coding myself. And yeah, I think it's pretty good at creating nice looking stuff, but you're right. When you actually dig into the code, it's a little bit of a mess and it can be quite hard to
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
change things. So you've been coding for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. And for anyone that has been coding that long, you're going to see a lot of these paradigm shifts, a lot of these changes,
Yeah.
things that tools that are introduced for developers, big changes. How do you think AI compares to previous things like, modern IDEs and other tools?
It may surprise you, but I think the actual impact is not much bigger. So if you go back to the late 80s, so we had the first integrated development environments provided by Borland, Turbo Pascal, and the likes. And this was a paradigm shift. Before that, we were used to using standalone editors and compilers. So this was mind blowing for the developers that had been around there. A few years later, we had or how do I put it? Visual IDE. So the most famous thing being Microsoft Visual Basic, which enabled folks to do programs that had never been doing programming before.
Yeah.
And in a way, I would like to compare this to what we are seeing with that vibe coding tools at the moment. So they also enable folks to do programming that probably would not have done this without the tools. But the seemingly more impact, in my opinion, comes from the fact that there are computing as a whole is way more ubiquitous than it was in the 90s or in the 80s. So the impact of the previous tools may have been less significant, but it was also because computing as a whole was not that important and not that ubiquitous as it is today. So it most certainly has a huge impact, no doubt, but it's not that mind-blowing that some of those CEOs want to make us believe.
Sure. Kind of touches again on the roundtable a little bit in that separating out that hype from reality, if you like. And I think one thing that's fair to say is AI has quite a way to go as yet.
Yeah.
What's kind of one thing that you would love to see AI, the community, overcome? One problem you'd like to see them overcome in the next year or so?
Actually, there are two things. The first one being debunking the myth. So AI is not going to solve the problems that humanity as a whole has. And my main grief about this is that the key figures in the area uh, have so bold statements. So we will no longer need doctors. We will no longer need this and that. And this is, forgive me, this is rubbish. I would like to shift focus back to where AI can really be useful. The thing I really love is things like cancer research. So there is such tremendous progress made possible by AI, which is unbelievable. And this brings me to the second point. At the moment we see a lot of time and money and computing power spent for, in my opinion, meaningless stuff like creating pictures or creating videos. So the amount of computing power that is consumed for this, forgive me, crap, could be used so much more sensibly for other areas, which I mentioned just earlier, where AI really shines. So my hope would be that we can get rid of this notion that AI will change humanity, but more focus on the true benefits that AI can give us.
I think there are a lot of things AI is very good at. There's also a lot of things AI is terrible at, and there's no need. There's no need. Excellent. So you're obviously, like we mentioned, been very much involved in droidCon. You also are an author, and just generally really involved in the community. So with that, obviously comes education, comes helping people. And I could see if you're a junior developer at the moment, it can be very difficult to know how much of AI you should be using, where you should find the balance between maybe learning traditional computer science and making use of AI. What would your advice be to those sorts of people that are just starting out?
For junior developers, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. And I think we need to sort of conquer that with making use of the tools, but also getting to grips with the things that work under the hood. So I honestly think there will be engineers in 20 years' time. So the juniors need to make sure that they do their homework with regards to algorithms. This is a very unpopular word, I'm sorry. With regards to how programming languages really work and what the underlying things are. So the theoretical underpinnings, you will need them, because otherwise we won't be able to understand and evaluate what the AI tools bring us. So it's easy to get results from AI tools, but the hard part is understanding if the output is worthy, and if it's not, why. So my suggestion for juniors is embrace the tools, but also make sure that you get a solid theoretical background, because this is important very much.
Sounds good to me. Well, thank you very much for being here today.
It's my pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure's on mine. Thanks for having me.